Draft week. It is draft week in the NFL, and the Eagles are on the clock. We're talking all about the possibility of moving up, moving down, who they're going to take, all things draft. We're also talking Phillies and their struggles, and the Sixers coming down the stretch, 11 games left. All that and more coming up on Sports Talk Philadelphia. Hello and welcome. I am John Kohlmeyer, and welcome to Sports Talk Philadelphia. I'm joined by my friend and co-producer, Caleb Flagger. Welcome, Caleb.
Nice to be here again with you.
Yes, once again. And my two remote correspondents, once again, Shane Nolan. Welcome, Shane.
Hello.
And Aiden Tiksinski. Got it. I got it down pat now.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, we're talking Eagles draft today. Big day, the day before the draft. The draft will happen, I assume, just a few hours after this airs. Caleb, let's talk about the Eagles draft. First draft of the Nick Sirianni era. What do you see them doing with that number 12 pick?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very interesting draft night because there's a lot of different ways a draft can go, and the Eagles are at the 12th pick, so a lot of different scenarios can go, the picks above them, and that can depend where they pick at. But I think a key player that the Eagles are looking at is Patrick Surtain. Now, he's a cornerback from Alabama, 3-year starter there, very impressive player, and I think a lot of draft analysts are saying that we haven't seen a player like him, a build like him, that cornerback, since Jalen Ramsey. So when you can get a premier talent like that at cornerback at the 12th overall pick, I mean, I think if he's there, there's no way the Eagles can pass him up. But if he's not there, I think the Eagles are definitely going to look at Alabama's wide receivers, Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith. Two great players there. So as long as those three players are available there, I think a lot of Eagles fans are going to be happy if the Eagles end up with one of those three.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of Patrick Surtain talk. Aiden, I want to go to you. I want to ask you, do you see the Eagles going defense for this pick? I'm seeing a lot more talk of that possibility coming up.
Yeah, I think that they will probably go defense. I think a lot of it is that this draft is so offense-oriented, especially in that top 10 where the Eagles traded out of. So I think them doing that really showed what the Eagles are thinking this year. I think that if they wanted to go offense, I mean, there's a lot of premier offensive players at wide receiver, quarterback. If that's where they wanted to go, I think they wouldn't have traded back. There is also rumor, though, about them possibly trading up back into the top 10. I think if they do that, expect them to go offense.
Yeah, I want to go back to you. The first draft of the Nick Sirianni era, obviously. What do you see the dynamic in that front office looking like? Do you see it as Nick Sirianni has a lot of influence over this pick, or is it really Howie and Jeff's pick to make?
Yeah, I'm definitely looking at it as Howie and Jeff's pick again. That's just because that's really what it was under Doug Peterson. But I do think that there is some input about Sirianni about what position they want. I think with Sirianni being an offensive-minded coach, that is something that the Eagles will definitely look at, if not in the first round, later in the draft. But I do think that Sirianni will say, hey, this is the guy that I want, or these are the 3 or 4 guys that I want. And the Eagles will take that into consideration. But I do definitely see this as being Howie's and Jeffrey Lurie's pick.
Yeah, and there's also the fans' questions about what even is a Nick Sirianni pick? What does that look like? What's the philosophy? We don't know that yet. So it'll definitely be an interesting draft to see for sure. And Caleb, talk to me about how important this draft is for the Eagles. I feel like we say that every year, but this year in particular, it feels like this draft is going to have a huge impact. What do you think?
Yeah, it definitely does, and it has a huge impact towards the Eagles' future. We have 11 draft picks this year, and all 11 need to be nailed. I mean, we need to have 11 young players on this roster next year, and there can be no mistakes because the Eagles have had too many mistakes in almost the whole decade of drafting. We have not had a lot of success drafting, as we've only had one Pro Bowler since 2013. That was Carson Wentz, and he's not even on our roster anymore. So the Eagles definitely, this is Howie Roseman's last year for me. If he doesn't step up with the drafting, he's got to go. I mean, we've seen too many mistakes in the past recent years with even, I don't want to give up on Jalen Reagor yet, but you gave up on Justin Jefferson. You've drafted J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who won't even be on the roster this year, for DK Metcalf. And it's just picks like that where you need to take the obvious player, and Howie Roseman has not done that so far in his draft tenure with the Eagles.
Yeah, Aiden, talk to me a little bit about how important you see this draft being.
Yeah, I think this draft is really important. I think that they are sort of looking at a rebuild almost. I know that we've argued a little bit on the show about whether or not it is a rebuild, but I think this is a really important year to sort of get that the youngest best prospects that we can, especially with how old this team's been. That's been a really big talking point around the NFL, is how old the Eagles are. So I think getting these young players is really good. And like Caleb said, we really need to sort of get the top level guys. I mean, you look at the list of who we've drafted in the last couple picks when we've had a first round. We drafted Andre Dillard, which really wasn't a good pick. There's talk about whether or not he'll be starting next year. We drafted Jalen Reagor, which at this point doesn't look like the best pick. So we really do need to nail these early picks because that will show you how good this team will be.
Yeah, and do you think that the team is going to play it safe in a way because of the implications around Howie and his job and him not deserving that job? Or do you see them taking another risk? Like, say another quarterback is there at that pick, which you never know with Howie. Do you see him possibly making a big splash pick like that, a big controversial pick like that, or playing it safe?
I'm not 100% sure. I think that if the Eagles decide to stay at 12 and the quarterback, let's say I think Zach Wilson's going to go pretty early. Trevor Lawrence will obviously be number one. I think the one quarterback that everyone's really talking about falling is Justin Fields for whatever reason. I think if he does fall to 12, the Eagles will definitely consider taking him. I personally don't like the idea of that. I think that we have so many other needs besides quarterback. But I think that if the Eagles really don't feel confident in Hurts, and at this point it doesn't seem that they are, I wouldn't be surprised if they do go with a quarterback there.
Yeah. What about you, Caleb? Do you see them playing it safe with this pick or going for a big pick? You know?
Yeah, I don't think we can rule anything out of Howie Roseman's imagination. I mean, we've seen that the obvious pick has been handed to him, and he hasn't taken that route before. So I think I don't have a lot of confidence in Howie Roseman. I mean, there's no way we can draft a quarterback. I mean, you have Jalen Hurts. Let him roll out this season. If he's not it, you have a top 5 draft pick next year. So Eagles should definitely go premier position on defense like cornerback. If that's not there for them, definitely go on the offense. Get Jalen Hurts the weapons he needs for this year and see what he can prove to us.
Yeah, personally, I do kind of feel like Justin Fields is a real possibility, and I don't really know why. I think Justin Fields has a lot of the similar characteristics to Jalen Hurts, but this is the Eagles we're talking about, so we could be looking at another quarterback on this roster by this time tomorrow. I also want to ask, who are some of the lesser-known prospects that you want to see the team draft with those other 10 picks in later rounds?
My premier thing is for the Eagles to get Patrick Surtain at the 12th overall pick, and if they do that, I want to see them in the early second round go after LSU wide receiver Terrace Marshall Jr. Now, he played with Jamar Chase as well, and he's just a beast. He's 6'3", 205 pounds. He's a true number 1 receiver. I mean, he put up 13 touchdowns in 2019, put up 10 touchdowns in 2020. He's a touchdown scoring machine, and I think that'd be a real steal for the Eagles in the early second round.
Yeah, I looked up some highlights, actually, of Terrace Marshall Jr. Underrated guy, I think. Aiden, what about you? Lesser-known prospects.
Yeah, so I kind of, not necessarily lesser known, but sort of the guys that we're not talking about. Unfortunately, Caleb, I think that Patrick Surtain will be going before the Eagles come up at 12. The Cowboys are looking at getting a quarterback, so are the Giants. So I think that if he's gone, one of the guys that's been talked about, there's a little bit of controversy among Eagles fans about whether we want him or not, J.C. Horn. He's a bit undersized. There's been games where he's been lit up, but he's still a pretty good cornerback that I think we could get. If you're going second round, I think if the Eagles go offense in first round, if he's still available, Asante Samuel Jr., he's a very good player. His dad obviously played on the Eagles, so there is some merit there. So I do think that if the Eagles go offense first round, going defense second or third round, I don't see any problem in that at all.
Real quick, Aiden, the Eagles were last in the league in giving up sacks last year, 4.1 sacks per game, which was by far more than any other team. Do you see any possibility of that first pick going to a lineman like Penei Sewell or one of the other linemen in the draft?
Yeah, so I actually did write that down. One of the guys who could be available in that 12th overall pick, I think that Penei Sewell will probably be gone. Denver obviously is looking at some offensive linemen. I'm still not sure that Cincinnati goes Jamar Chase because they do have a need at O-line. So I think that if the Eagles need an offensive lineman, Rashawn Slater from Northwestern, he's been talked about as the second best offensive line prospect in this draft. I don't have any problem with the Eagles going offensive line, especially someone like that. But if Penei Sewell does fall as well, I think that the Eagles should definitely consider getting him.
All right, and with that, we will wrap up Eagles talk. Exciting draft coming up. We will see what happens. But let's move into a little bit of talk about the Phillies, who are 11-12, second place in the division. So far, we'll talk about the division. Back-to-back series losses versus the Giants and the Rockies, and things are looking pretty rocky for the Phillies right now. Caleb, what do you see as the problem for this team?
Yeah, this team is obviously not playing up to their standards so far this season. They've went 4-6 in the last 10 here. They're 11-12 overall in the season, but thankfully their division is not too good either, and they're only tied for second place right now, which isn't too bad. They're a half game behind the Mets here, but the Phillies division here is looking like the NFC East of the MLB here. I mean, just came into the season, we said that the Mets and the Braves were two top 5 teams, top 10 teams, and it's not looking like it right now. And the Phillies, bottom half of the rotation is just looking awful. I mean, you have Chase Anderson and Matt Moore with 6.78 ERA and a 9.5 ERA. I mean, that's just unacceptable, and you can't have that as your bottom rotation guy. So, and a lot of the Phillies hitters aren't stepping up either, and that's been a big thing throughout this whole season now. And starting to get later in the season now, it's when your bat's supposed to come alive. It's getting warmer out, and Charlie Manuel used to say it's hitting season, so the Phillies haven't been doing much of that lately. Yeah,
the back end of the lineup and the rotation, as you said, really not producing. Shane, I want to bring you into the conversation. The Phillies have been outscored 43-30 in their past 7 games. Pretty rough stretch for a lineup that a lot of people around the league kind of thought was going to be one of the upper tier lineups. What do you see as a solution to this? Do you see this as a huge problem going forward? What do you think?
I don't see it as a huge problem going forward with weather getting warmer sooner. I mean, they're bound to start hitting. Like last year, we've been saying they were top 5 in MLB in offense. And the way I see it is you have Harper, Hoskins, and Realmuto. They're hitting the ball right now. And what you have to do is, I mean, Hoskins has 6 home runs in the past 6 games. So what you have to do is I think you have to move him down into the cleanup and move Realmuto up in the second spot in the lineup, because he's been hitting the ball to get on base, but when Hoskins has been in his home runs, nobody has been really on base for them. And so I think you have to switch them too. And then Harper obviously just is getting on base all the time. He's starting to hit the ball really well too. So.
Yeah, those 2 through 4 spots have been really the most reliable, really the only reliable parts of this lineup so far. I do think Alec Boehm will figure it out. He's struggling, but I want to ask you, Shane, again about Andrew McCutchen. And is there a world where McCutchen is no longer the leadoff guy? Does he not make starts? Do you possibly even put Nick Maton in the outfield to take his place?
Well, Maton, I mean, he's never played the outfield before, and last night we seen Brad Miller in the outfield. He's not really an outfielder either. He's an infield guy, and he misplayed a fly ball that he probably should have caught. But right now, Andrew McCutchen is batting 154. He has 10 hits on the season, and he has a 300 OBP, and that's not what you need from your leadoff hitter. But I do think that they probably should put Maton up in the leadoff spot. I mean, he's hitting 345, I think, right now. So I think that's what they need to do, and I guess they could probably try to put him in outfield and just see what he can do in there. I mean, it can't be any worse than what's going on right now.
Aiden, I'll go to you for this. Do you see this lineup as a huge problem, or is it just a little early season struggles? And if so, do you see Girardi making any lineup changes?
Yeah, I think at this point it's just some early season struggles that guys will get out. One of the guys you talked about that you think will be able to fix it is Alec Boehm. I agree with that. I mean, you see what he's doing with runners in scoring position. Even if he's not getting hits, he's still driving in runs, which is very important with this lineup struggling. There are some major concerns. I've talked about this before. Andrew McCutchen struggling right now. He's only getting older, so I think that his struggles isn't something that can necessarily be fixed. And our center fielders are just anyone that we put out there at this point is not able to hit. We brought up Odubel Herrera for some unknown reason because we thought he'd be able to fix it. He's played 2 games so far, 0 hits in that time, no walks either. So at this point, I'm just really concerned about that center field position. I think that we could put Nick Maton in. My biggest concern is it will turn into a Scott Henry situation where we put him in too many positions. He struggles at defense, and then that will carry over to struggles on offense. So I think if they want to put Maton in center field, bring him back down to that alternate site in the minor leagues, let him play some defense there, and then bring him back up because it is a long season this year. So
yeah, that Odubel move did seem kind of like a desperation move for this team. But One strength of the team, Caleb, I'll go to you. The top of the starting rotation, as you already kind of mentioned, Nola, Wheeler, and Eflin have been really exceptional in this stretch. And I think the hope was that the bottom half of the rotation would be balanced out by that lineup. But the lineup hasn't really produced. But talk a little bit about those first three guys and how good they've been so far.
Yeah, those top three pitchers have pitched excellent this beginning of the season here. I mean, you got Aaron Nola with a 2.5 ERA right now. You got Zach Wheeler with a 3 ERA. And then you even have Zach Eflin with a 3.5 ERA. I mean, that's excellent from your top three starters, and that's what you want to see from them. But like we said, when you go to the fourth and fifth starter in the rotation, I mean, the ERA just spikes through the roof, and you can't have that. And the bullpen has also showed their flaws. But it is very relieving to see that we have three solid starting rotation guys, as we've seen in the past few years that we haven't really had that number three guy that's really been solidified as a number three starter. And I think Zach Eflin's really starting to show himself why he is the number three starter on this team.
Real fast, we'll close up Eagles talk or Phillies talk with a little talk about their closer, Hector Neris. Came in the other night after a brilliant performance from Zach Wheeler. Shane, are you happy with Hector Neris in that spot? He almost gave up a bomb to Arenado to walk off the game. What do you think?
No, I'm not. I never liked Hector Neris as a closer because, I mean, we've seen time and time again that he kind of blows games all the time. I mean, he did it in Colorado. The first game in Colorado, he gave up a walk-off home run to Raimel Tapia, and he almost did it again the other night to Nolan Arenado, like you said. But I think when Archie Bradley comes back, I think you put him as the closer, and maybe Neris can be your seventh or eighth man out of the bullpen.
Yeah, I think Girardi has a lot of moves to possibly make in the coming weeks. But with that, we will move into the Sixers, who have 11 games remaining on their schedule. Pretty weak schedule, as you'll probably talk about. One of the worst weeks in recent memory, though, for the Sixers. 0-4 with no Simmons or Tobias for much of it. They lost the 1 seed to the Nets, of course. 42-20 are the Nets. Sixers in second place for the first time in a while. Is there cause to be concerned over this struggle sesh? That is a messed up leaderboard right there. What do you think, Caleb? No,
I definitely wouldn't be worried as a Sixers fan. I mean, you got to see when we went on this 0-4 loss streak, I mean, you didn't have Ben Simmons. You didn't have Tobias Harris for most of it. Even Seth Curry missed a few games. So in every one of those games, you didn't have all five starters. And we've seen throughout the season when the Sixers have all five starters, they win basketball games. So when they have those five starters in, I'm really confident in this team that they can win basketball games. I mean, we're still only one game back from the number one seed. I mean, like you said, we have a very easy schedule coming up, so we'll see what happens with that. So I could definitely see us. We can still get the number one seed, but even if we end up with the number two seed, I mean, just as good. So,
Aiden, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Aiden, is there any concern from you regarding the Sixers in this 0-4 stretch?
No, not at this point. The big reason that I'm not concerned, like Caleb said, we were missing so many guys. And even in those games, they weren't really even bad losses. I mean, you look, the only guy that we really had was Embiid starting against the Bucks in the first game. We only lost by 7. Obviously, we lost by 30 the second game. But in that game, we were missing Simmons, Embiid, and Korkmaz, who we've talked about being a really key player off the bench. So those are 3 guys that we were missing in that blowout. So really, I'm not concerned. And then you look what we did in the win that we had. With having Embiid, Simmons back, and Korkmaz, we won by 30. So, no, I'm really not concerned at all about that little losing streak that we had there.
Yeah, and concerning the health of the team, and you already kind of alluded to it, it kind of raises the question, should the team prioritize the health of their players in the last stretch of the season, or should they prioritize getting that 1 seed, and you feel as though the 1 seed isn't that important?
Yeah, I do believe that we can do a little bit of both. I feel like they can rest players and still acquire that number 1 overall seed. I mean, the schedule coming up is very weak. I mean, it's a lot of non-playoff teams, and it's a lot of games where you can probably sit Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid or Tobias Harris, one of those games, and you can probably still come out with the W. So I'm not too worried. I mean, obviously, if you sit Embiid the rest of some of these games the rest of the season, his MVP case is probably going to get shot. So that's something. But like I said, I think Embiid and this team's more worried about getting this number 1 seed and also getting to the finals or even the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time in Embiid and Simmons era together.
Aiden, what about you? Do you prioritize health or seeding in this scenario?
I'm prioritizing seeding. One of the main reasons is getting Ben Simmons back. Because he wasn't injured and it was a sickness, I'm fine with him playing the rest of the season because he's clearly I don't think that it's his body being tired. Obviously, if he's still dealing with repercussions of him being sick, let him rest a few games, or not even let him rest a few games, just give him a few minutes off here and there. But I think that we have a shot at this 1 seed, and that's something that the Sixers definitely, it seems that they want. So I think they should definitely go out and get it.
Yeah, and Simmons, I think, also wants Defensive Player of the Year, which is another thing that will probably drive him to play the remainder of these games. With these 11 games left, what are some of the biggest things that you're looking for going into the playoffs? Any weaknesses for the team? Any strengths for the team? What are you looking for?
For me, it's going to be really interesting to see what guards come off the bench for them in the playoffs, because you've seen a lot of guards have stepped up lately, and a couple of them haven't played up to par. Like Shake Milton has not been playing like himself lately, and then we've seen Tyrese Maxey even. He stepped up. George Hill's starting to step up. So it's going to be very interesting for me to see who Doc Rivers solidifies as coming off the bench for the guards. So it's either going to be Shake Milton, Furkan Korkmaz, or it's going to be, or George Hill's going to be in that mix too. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the end of the season rolls out for the bench.
Aiden, what are you looking for in this final stretch of the season? And in addition to that, talk a little bit about George Hill playing about 20 minutes a game, I would say. How do you see him factoring in?
Yeah, so I think at this point, George Hill, he's still trying to mesh a little bit with the team. He did have a nice 11-point game versus the Suns. After that, not too many points scored. I think it's just getting him set up with the rest of the bench there. I do agree with Caleb. I'm interested to see what guards we have, but I'm also a little bit concerned as who we have as our 4. At this point, it's Mike Scott and Thibault. Martise Thibault, he's not the best shooter. He's a great defensive player, which is why I find having them there. Mike Scott, he's just a very streaky player at best. And then my other concern is who we have as a backup at center. I love Dwight Howard. He's been playing really well, but he's gotten in a lot of issues when it comes to ejections. And once he's out, we don't really have someone besides Embiid. So if Embiid starts to show a little bit of weakness and they want to take him out, and then something happens to Dwight Howard where maybe he gets thrown out of the game, then we really don't have anyone at that 5 position, and that could be a big issue in the playoffs.
All right, we will see if the Sixers can manage that 1 seed or whatever happens as the season comes to an end. And with that, we will move into Fast 5. We got some great questions for you today. We're starting with Shane. Padres and Dodgers rivalry. It's been 7 games or so. I'm not exactly sure, but it's really revitalized baseball talk and that rivalry. Do you see that as the best rivalry in the sport right now?
Yeah, I do. It all goes back to last year in the playoffs when the Dodgers swept the Padres and NLDS. I think it was Manny Machado. He had a home run. He pimped the home run, and Dodgers got mad at it. There was a benches clearing brawl, and then Cody Bellinger caught the out to end the game. I think it was the winning series game, and he obviously got really excited for it. And I think that made the Padres mad. And then this year, their first game of the season, you had Clayton Kershaw was pitching, and I think one of the Padres batters got a catcher interference. Well, what Kershaw thought was catcher's interference, and he said something to him, and then it almost been a bench clearing brawl. And then Fernando Tatis Jr., he's just been hitting a lot of home runs against the Dodgers. And the other night he did it against Trevor Bauer twice. And back in spring training, Trevor Bauer had one eye closed and was pitching to Tatis. So when Tatis hit the home run, he covered his eye running the bases. So it's definitely the best rivalry in baseball right now.
Yeah, and Aiden, I want to go to you for this one. The NBA this year starting their new play-in tournament for the 7 and 8 seeds. Talk about who you see in those seeds. Explain this format again for me. You explained it already to me. I kind of forget. Don't really get it. Take it away.
Yeah, so the format this year, it's a little bit interesting. There's not really a 7th and 8th seed, so the 4 teams that have a shot at making it are the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th seeds. The 7th and 8th seed will play each other in a play-in game. The 9th and 10th seed will. If you're the winner of the 7th and 8th, automatically becomes the 7th seed. The loser of that game becomes the 8th seed and will play the winner of the 9th and 10th seed. Whoever wins that becomes the 8th seed. So it's a little bit complicated. It will make a little bit more sense once it gets going. At this point, the 4 teams in the East that have a shot at the playoffs are the Heat, Hornets, Pacers, and Wizards. The 2 teams that I think make it out of this play-in tournament are the Heat. The Heat made it in the East, at least. In the Heat, They made it to the NBA Finals last year. I think that they still want to make it deeper in the playoffs this year, so I think they'll make it. And then the Pacers are a very deep team. They have T.J. McCollum, former Sixer, Jeremy Lamb, Miles Turner, and Karis LeVert. I think that's a pretty good team to have in the playoffs. I don't think that they'll go far, but I think that that's good enough to make it past the two other teams. And then in the West, you have the Trailblazers, Grizzlies, Spurs, and Warriors winning the 7th seed. I have the Trailblazers. They, again, like the Pacers, are a very deep team. And then I also have the Warriors making because of Steph Curry.
All right, and it is draft week, so for the final 3 questions of Fast 5, they will be draft related. And I'll start with you again, Aiden. Is Trevor Lawrence really the best rookie quarterback prospect in a generation to you?
I think he is, and that's just because he's played all 3 years at Clemson, starting his freshman year, where he led them to a national championship. I think that already made him the most interesting quarterback of this draft. And you look at it, the way that the draft has really gone is quarterback heavy. So I think that having a quarterback who is going to be the 1 seed, it's going to make him the best quarterback in this draft.
Kyle Pitts, big name. We're seeing him go to a lot of different places in the mock drafts and everything. Caleb, Philly area native. Where do you see Kyle ending up?
Yeah, I'll be really shocked if Kyle Pitts falls past the top 6 picks. I mean, I see him eyeing up at number 4 to the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, they're looking for offensive talent. Either it's offensive line or they could really use a tight end because they really haven't had a good one since Tony Gonzalez. So I could see Kyle Pitts easily going in the top 5.
Or hopefully the Eagles. I would love to have Kyle Pitts here. And last question. Who's the best wide receiver in this wide receiver loaded class? Is it Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, or Devontae Smith, to your eyes?
I mean, all 3 of them are very great players, but I got to go with Jamar Chase. I mean, the numbers he put up in 2019 on that LSU national championship team was unreal. I mean, just the body build he has, I mean, the athleticism he has. He's a true number 1 receiver. I mean, he's got the speed of like Tyreek Hill. So dual threat player, I mean, very good, and I'd love to have him on my team, but also love to have Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle. As I see, all 3 of them are going to be very good players in the NFL.
Yeah, well, as we know, Howie hates Bama, so probably no Devontae Smith or Jalen Waddle. But with that, we will wrap up on Sports Talk Philadelphia. Check out our Twitter at SportsTalk LTV. Thank you for tuning in this week, and we will be back next week with a whole lot to talk about, including the draft. Now we're going to stare at you for a minute.
Audio Jungle.